Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Madrid United. Welcome to the show, everyone. A show of a difference tonight. Not only have I got my partner in crime for the watch-alongs, Tim Niagara Reddy's with me, but we're more than welcoming tonight. We've got Danny Dichio, ex-QPR, ex-Sunderland, you name it, ex-West Bromwich Albion, now a coach over in Canada himself. Pleasure to have you on the show, Danny, mate. Thank you for coming on, mate.
Ex-Toronto FC, of course.
Right, mention that as well. No, thanks for having me on, gents. It's a pleasure.
No problem at all, mate. No problem at all. Now, it was Tim who put us in touch with Danny. Over there, living in Canada now, Danny, over there with Toronto, doing all sorts of coaching stuff. You are now officially UEFA A coach, qualified, mate. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yes. And you're with Toronto FC coaching the youth set up there now, is that right?
Well, I'm actually with the second team, basically the reserves now. So I got bumped up last year, but we didn't manage to get any games under our belt because of obviously the pandemic and restrictions traveling to the States. So we had a tough year last year, but this year we're looking to hopefully get some competitive games under our belt and get some games in USL, which is where we play.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think we're all praying for normality back. Just a bit of atmosphere as well. Tim, how are you doing, mate? How's your day been? -10 over there in Canada right now, you say?
Yeah, I think it's probably about that. I'm trying to spend as least amount of time out here as possible. I think Danny's in the same boat. He's about an hour and 20 minutes north of me in Toronto area. So, but it's quite chilly over here right now, I think.
Well, them guys above me in Scotland topped up about -22 today. So, yeah. See, it's the coldest winter since 95. Going to 95, Danny, mate, that was probably, I would say, your sort of heyday QPR days, mate, really. That's what we've made the thumbnail from, the old ponytail days.
Oh, yeah.
Long hair days, mate. I mean, it's going back a bit now, but people who are watching, people of our age, mine and Tim's age, when football used to be, well, it used to be a lot tougher. It used to be no holds barred, really, compared to what it's like now. But Danny, going into that, you've played in that era, the 90s, coming up when it was a real, I would say, hard man's game. Now coming through, you've done your coaching badges, UEFA A. When it comes to the coaching, have you noticed how different it is? Have you been sort of taught different things? Does VAR come into coaching now when it gets to this sort of level as well? Is it completely different to what it used to be in terms of how you was coached and how you're looking at the game yourself now?
100%. The game has changed and the game has always evolved. And I think Manchester United's best ever head coach manager from wherever it was, even better than Busby, and I dare say it, but Sir Alex was a guy that evolved with the times, and for me, he's one of the top managers ever that's ever graced our system in Britain. But just the way he evolved as a coach and as a person, and the way he had to manage players, different personalities and characters. And we're not even going into tactics here, gents. We're just talking about managing big egos and personalities, and what a fantastic job he did. And I kind of take little bits and pieces from managers that I played under and coaches, good and bad, and try to bring that to my own coaching philosophy. But you're right, the game has changed. Players have changed a lot as well compared to back in the day. There's not as many leaders within teams now, older experienced guys that are in the team and leading the young guys and putting them on the right kind of pathway to behave, as you would say. And that was a big part of me growing up in the 90s, where we had experienced guys that have been in the league or played for that supposed club that I was playing for at the time, putting you on the straight and narrow. And I just don't see that anymore within the modern game.
No, definitely
absolutely not. Yeah, for sure. You know, you talked about the young players there, Danny, and obviously over the last little while, you know, we see young players on social media and some of the things that get said on social media. How do you, as a coach, like, is that something now too that you have to implement? Because obviously back then you could shield the players maybe a little bit better from things that were being said. Is that certainly something now as a coach that you have to take into consideration when you're looking at your man management skills and things like that as well?
For sure, and it works both ways, to be quite honest, Tim, because social media is so big now, and there's no way we can get away from it. I don't care what anyone says. Can we manage it a little bit better? But I think that's a bigger conversation, and we've seen a lot of stuff coming out recently about the racism towards players, from all clubs, even to referees and managers now, the hate stuff that's going on. But when it comes down to players use social media to their benefit. They use it for their brand, their marketing as well. So it's very, very difficult to suddenly say, listen, we don't want you on social media, or we don't want you using it in this way, because it's the bigger picture. You're speaking to agents, then you're speaking to managers, you're not even speaking to the player himself. For me, as an ex-player, I really don't think I could have coped with social media, because back in our day, we used to look at the papers the next day and have a look at what mark you got out of 10, whether it be Sun or the News of the World, and that used to kill you at times when you got 5 out of 10 or something, and you thought you had a decent game, and so now you've kind of entered the fray of the fans giving their insight into how you played, whether it was good or bad. And that can lead to a lot of frustration towards players, to their confidence, to their, I don't know, it's just a strange concept for me where players are having to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, at that level now, like you said, in the second team that you're coaching there, Danny, now, is there something in place at the clubs now for handling what might come social media wise from the press? Is there that sort of coaching that's involved at that sort of level as well, sort of preparing players in case they do make it to the first team? Does that start at an early age at football clubs now, from your experience?
Well, so from our club's point, we try to engage with the players and try to get them into some kinds of media training at early age, by just putting them in front of a camera. It could be in front of their own teammates. It could be in front of staff. Just to get them used to talking and being engaged to the camera, because a lot of players do not know how to talk on camera, and it's not their fault. They just haven't been kind of open to it, or they haven't experienced it at a younger age. Now, with social media, we have people coming in at the beginning of the season, halfway throughout the season, to tell players and remind them of their behavior and who they're representing. But it's not just because of the club they're playing with at that present time. It's also for future employment, because as you know, a lot of employees now, they go back through the history of people that they're hiring or employing, or a prospective player that they might want to buy, or they're trying to find out his history, his character. We've even seen a lot of professionals get pulled up over tweets that they've tweeted probably 5 or 6 years ago, and getting fined for it. So if we can help our younger players just to understand it's okay to be cool. We know that. We were all young ones, and we want to be the flash guy in front of everyone else and show that we've bought our mum a car, or we've done this and done that, which I still can't believe they put on social media. But some people are different, and we try to explain to them, look, there's a way of dealing with social media. There's a way that you're going to be portrayed as well. And you've got to try and keep things on an even keel. And it's difficult with younger players, especially when they've got so many different voices in their head, so many friends that are trying to engage in different avenues for them that will hopefully push them on and get them more money out of football. And it's a difficult environment for them. We know.
Yeah. All right, quick question for Mike Lilly there in the comments. Which coach had the most influence on you, Danny? Which one was the one probably that stands out in your mind, in your memory?
Well, for me, it's a guy that I think we all know. He was a player, fantastic player that played for Manchester United as well. He was a vastly experienced guy. His nickname was the Crab, and that was Ray Wilkins. Ray Wilkins.
Legend.
Yeah. He was a guy that kind of took me under my wing when I was a young player at QPR. He was retiring from the game, but he was still hanging on. He then became player coach with us for a while. And I played under him at QPR. I played under him at England under 21s when he was an assistant there, at Millwall when we got to the FA Cup final against Man United as well. So he was a person that I respected. He was a mentor to me. He was a guy that would talk honestly with me, and when I needed to kick up the arse or told to be put in my place at certain times, he was that guy, and I would listen to him each and every day. And it's a sad story because he's not with us anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but I know through experience, and I know through just hearing all the comments that he touched a lot of different people in different ways. You know, whether you played football, whether you're involved with the media, whether you were just an honest everyday guy as well.
Yeah, I do remember coming out on everyone on the radio used to speak, and what everyone used to say about Ray Wilkins was he used to make you feel like $1 million. He used to make you feel like he was brilliant. He just had the way of talking. It was no surprise that Mourinho had him. I think at Mourinho's pomp, at his best time at Chelsea, Ray Wilkins was there as well. It's no surprise. Surround yourself with players and people like that, then it's a recipe for success, it has to be said. And obviously, like you said, Danny, everyone has. I don't think anyone had anything bad to ever say about Ray Wilkins. I can still remember him curling that one into the top corner at Wembley. I used to watch that video back constantly. I used to be my favourite goal when I was growing up as a kid. I was never there, never old enough, but that's the video I always used to watch back. Brilliant. I couldn't believe it. That old school football as well.
A lovely ball they played with at Wembley that game. They had the big goals with the extended goalposts.
Yeah.
Like the old school goals. Yeah. They're good old days.
Oh, mate, I remember them. Yeah, when it used to go right in the corner and even hit the net, it hit the stanchion and came back out.
That's right.
Absolutely brilliant. But I mean, going back to them days, mate, obviously we are crazy United fans. Obviously, I go home and away, so I'm stuck at home at the moment. I'm suffering. I've watched United for many years now, and you was in probably we just about started to dominate English football. I mean, you played against a lot of United legends in your time. I mean, is there anyone that sticks out in your mind who stood out when you walked on the pitch and watched them play against you in that United shirt? You was like, whoa, hang on a minute, this is different level stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and I had the privilege of growing up in the same kind of youth teams that we played districts and schools together with David Beckham, and
yeah, man,
he was just a guy that was very special. He was very small when we were young, and we used to play on kind of rival teams in London, and then we kind of developed into the same London team representing the schools. He went over to Barcelona or somewhere when he was really young, but he was locked on to going to United. He was a big United fan. His dad was a big Man United fan. So to kind of, we're the same age, for him to develop and go through the system and see him play at the highest level, the most elite level for club and country, was wonderful to see. But playing against the United team, there was so many good players back in those days, from playing against the giant man of Peter Schmeichel and trying to bang goals against him, which I fortunately did a couple of times. But I don't know whether they were lucky goals. I remember at United once, I stopped him from dribbling out once, and he actually pinged the ball against my back arm. I put it back into the home end. Today's game, VAR would have absolutely cancelled that off. I was delighted at the time, but like, he was just one of them. And even the early centre back pairings of Pallister and Steve Bruce, as a young player playing against two stalwarts who were just head and shoulders above any other centre backs I played against in the league. Just the experience, the communication. And even at a latter date, you go into now the Roy Keane, who would be the first player on my list if I was ever putting a team down, and he'd be the first name on my starting 11. Just an absolute warrior. The demand put on other players. He used to fall out with people on the pitch, and I'd be like, "Why's he talking like that to his teammates? Like, I'd be giving it back to him." And then they were like, everyone took it. Like, and they were a young team back in those days, and he was still a young player himself, coming over from Forest.
Yeah.
He was just a different animal, and I would say that I loved playing against them, but at the same time, I hated it, because you hear players talk about in the tunnel before games, like you're lining up against the likes of those guys, and you see Ryan Giggs, you see Beckham. At a later date, Ronaldo, a younger Ronaldo, came over. I remember playing against him at West Brom, and I thought, who the hell is this kid? Like, he's like, couldn't get near him, and he was trying all these step overs and moves. And so quick, and I was like, I think it's time for me to hang up my boots if this is the way football's going. I just haven't got a chance to keep up with them. But again, like standing in the tunnel and waiting to go out on the pitch, whether you're at Old Trafford or even at home against these guys, they had a certain aura about them, and it was fantastic times to play against those teams. Although we didn't win many games, it was just a privilege to be out on the same field as those guys.
Yeah, I remember the one goal you scored was in 95-96 for QPR. Did it take a deflection off Dennis Irwin?
That's right. Yeah.
Is that the one that? Yeah. So I remember seeing highlights of that goal. I remember that when we scored.
That was the game, the year that we got relegated, and I think if we won that game or we drew it, we went by a point, we would have stayed up. And Eric Cantona scored in like the 8th minute of extra time.
I remember it.
So it was like,
it was a header, wasn't it?
Yeah, like Fergie time. Like everyone was like, it wasn't even. It was like an extra period of extra time because he scored in the 8th minute, and I just remember being devastated after in the changing room after the game. But again, like you're talking about the likes of Eric Cantona being on the same pitch as a legend like that, and
it says a lot, mate. That you talked about QPR going there that season. I think that goal. I think a lot of United fans will remember how important that goal was in that campaign for us because we did go on to win the league. I think that season, and that was Cantona's last-minute winner against Liverpool as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did the double that year.
Same season. So that was, I think, Cantona's prime. I would say that was Cantona at his ultimate best. You just rolled off some names there. Beckham, Giggs, Keane, Cantona, Palish to Schmeichel, Ronaldo even. You've played and you've worked on the same pitch. You could arguably say we're the best player on the planet right now, Dan. It's got to be, I think looking back on it, you have to look back with pride in terms of what you actually achieved and how you actually came across on the pitch and how long. Because I think, if I'm right, I'm thinking every single club you've been at, you've actually scored at. That's right, isn't it? Every single club you played for, you scored, which is it's no mean feat.
No, especially for me, who couldn't kick a ball properly, but I could head. The thing that gripes me is I hear a lot of former ex-pros and they're complaining about present-day footballers and guys that are playing in the Premier League now, and it edges me a little bit because for me, as you said there, I was privileged to play at that time, and like all my mates I grew up with in West London, 99% of them wanted to be professional footballers, and I was very fortunate to become a professional footballer, whether it was because of my profile as a big tall boy at a young age, and that's how the game was kind of evolving back in the early 90s, late 80s, a big target man up front with a small player, and I just fitted that system well. And I played with a lot of boys growing up, as I'm sure we all did, that should have went on to become pros. And there's a little bit of fortune involved. There's a lot of stuff off the field that we don't really think about that can affect a younger player. But I was very lucky. I had a good family, an Italian dad who was very, very strict with me when I wanted to go out partying or going to certain places on a Thursday or Friday. He would say, no, you've got training or a game the next day. And I look back on it now, and they're all kind of things, that all small details that build into having a professional career. And I was very fortunate about that. And I still am very privileged to say I was a professional footballer for 17 years.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely, mate. You mean, looking at it now, before we go on to the modern day stuff, you talked about the Keanes there, Cantonas and that. Quickly, I want to know, who was your favourite strike partner to play alongside, and who was the toughest player that you ever came up against, and a player you would walk off the pitch and go, God, thank God I don't have to play him for another 6 months or whatever it is.
There was many of them back in those days as well, and centre backs. they're a different breed in themselves. That you either get the crazy, really aggressive guy that knows that it's an individual battle. Sorry, let me just turn up.
He's a man in demand.
Yeah, I think it's King Eric now telling me I should be the best defender I played against.
Yeah, that's it. That's Vinnie Jones giving you a warning right there, mate.
But going back to it, there was so many good guys that played at that time. But for me, if you had a little bit of both, those were the guys that really stood out. So like your John Terrys, your Rio Ferdinands, even Vidic back in the day. He was a nasty bugger, by the way. He was a he was a real terror to play against because he knew he was in the game, but he knew it was an individual battle that he wasn't going to give you any yardage at all. He wasn't going to give you a sniff, and he made that his personal battle. And for me, as a big target man who liked that battle, it was intriguing to play against these guys.
Yeah.
But also, they could play as well. They could hit a 40-yard ball. They could find a little pass through the lanes. They could bring a ball down in their chest and be very calm. So those are the guys that really stood out for me.
Yeah. Would you say you was like to play against the rough and tumble sort of centre back like a Vidic, or would it be like the likes of a Ferdinand? I mean, he's still tough himself, but in terms of the way Vidic played, he was the man who just went in and destroyed. And from what we seen, it looked like Ferdinand was the one who always swept up and was the more elegant player. Would you like the bit of the rough and tumble, the ones who wanted to get down and dirty in it, or would you prefer like the silkier sort of centre back to play against?
The rough and tumble guys, for sure. It's not only that. I think the referee looks at it as well and says, okay, you two are going to go at it for 90 minutes or 90 plus minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway where the smoother guys, the more silkier guys, they were a law until themselves a little bit, and the referees protected them a little bit as well, which was strange. But also now I can see it from a different point of view, from a referee's point of view, saying he doesn't really get involved in all that other stuff that you two loggerheads want to get at. So let's let him play. Let's let him. Actually, the smaller centre backs were also very tough to play against because they were not interested in the physical battle or anything, and they were very hard to kind of initiate contact with. They were always hiding around corners, willing to step in front of you when a ball's coming into you. So they were difficult to play against as well.
Nah, the old Steve Bruceys.
Yeah.
Bruce and
they're the ones. Going into Monday football, mate. Obviously, you've mentioned it yourself there. You've experienced relegation right now. Another one of your former clubs, West Brom, are up against United this weekend, mate. Big Sam's in there now for West Brom. He is notorious for turning what looks like a dead end around completely with clubs who look like they're destined for the drop and turning it around. It does seem this time, though, from looking at it now, that it looks like it's a step too far this time for Big Sam, because West Brom do seem to be struggling now and being cut adrift. I mean, do you have any hope at all for your former club West Brom in terms of this relegation fight, or is it? I dare say it, a lot of people do label them the yo-yo club, up and down a lot, even though they have spent quite a lot of time in the Premier League. Is it looking a bit too much this season, do you reckon, for West Brom?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I hate to admit it, but I think this is a job too far, and this could be Big Sam's first relegation. He's come out with quotes this week to say that they need 38 points to survive this year. I think they're on 13 at the moment. Is that correct?
Yes.
He's also mentioned about if they're going to stay up, they don't only need to be beating teams in and around them. They need to beat a big team. They need to beat one of the top 4, top 5. Now, they went to Anfield and they got the draw, a 1-1 draw there. I just don't see it with the run that United are on at the moment. And Ole's got a nice mix of players that he keeps moving in and out. I think he's settled on his front group of players now, and they're all playing together nicely. He's settled on his centre-back pairings. And I think it's just a job too far for this West Brom team, who have been no consistency with them, with their head coach. I was very surprised in them getting rid of Bilic.
I was going to ask you that, Danny. I was going to ask you if you thought that Bilic went too early, if you thought that he should have given an opportunity to turn it around.
You're right, mate, because he did just get that draw at the Etihad against City as well, and then was sacked a couple of days later.
Yeah, but speaking to a couple of like journalists that work at West Brom, basically said the decision was made like a week before that game even. So we all know the goings on behind the club system and stuff like that. But I just thought there wasn't really much of a backing in the transfer market for him in the summer. Brought in a couple of players from the Championship, and I've played in both the Championship and the Premier League, and there's an even bigger difference now, I feel, with both leagues. That's not to say that players can't play in the Premier League, but you can't come up with 6 or 7 Championship players and hope to compete in the Premier League. It just doesn't happen anymore. The parity has gone even further, and you look at the middle of the table. Some of the teams in the middle of the table, they're very, very good teams, but they're never going to break into that top 4 or 5, in my opinion, as well. But just going back to West Brom, there's been too much inconsistency with the head coach, with the owners, and it's a big club, West Brom. The Albion was a lovely club to play at, a very historic club, but I just feel that they need to settle down and maybe choose a head coach like Eddie Howe or someone to rebuild that club again and hopefully get back in the Premier one day. But it's not going to happen. You want to get back in there and stay in there. I actually have more hope for Sheffield United than West Brom.
Yeah, that's strange, isn't it? But yeah, you can see there's a bit of a togetherness and vibe building again at Sheffield United now, can't you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying never, because Big Sam's always going to surprise someone, and it would not surprise me at all if West Brom went to United and got some kind of result. I personally don't see it.
It wouldn't surprise us either.
No, it really wouldn't. It really wouldn't. It was crazy. You said the inconsistencies at West Brom there, mate. That was made clear because you said it. You went to Anfield, got the draw, and then in the same week got absolutely smashed to pieces by Leeds.
Yeah.
Again, another Championship side. So it shows the inconsistencies there. But it's not just at the bottom, mate. We know it as United fans. We have had some highs this season. I mean, actually playing Leeds again for the first time in so long, 16 years, I think it was. Smashed them 6 at home, and then we get beat by Sheffield United, who are rock bottom, the worst team in Premier League history. Then we beat Southampton 9-0. It's just an absolutely mental season. But you touched on United and Ollie there, mate, and getting a good mix and rotating his squad well. In terms of the forward line, you being a striker, I know, Tim, you wanted to ask Danny about Martial in terms of the critique that he's getting at the moment and how you see him compared to the likes of a Cavani type striker. Is it all about the character of a striker when someone new and bigger and more experienced comes into the team? Would you look up to that striker and go, I can learn from him? Or is it really down to the mental strength of that player? Because you could also see it as he's replacing me because he don't think I'm up to the job.
Listen, my son, I've got 4 children. My second son, Franco, is a big United fan. He's a big Man United fan, and I have arguments with him every week about Martial. Martial drives me round the bend.
Yeah, I know.
And it's not just his play; it's his overall body language at times, and his understanding of, okay, I've given the ball away, I've tried to make something happen, and then he just stops. And for me, that must really drive his fellow teammates up and coaching staff up. And he does some bits and pieces where you go, okay, yeah, not too bad. But if you're a United player, a Manchester United player, you have to perform consistently for that 90 minutes of a game. Now, I know that most players can't do that for a 46 to 50 game season in all competitions, but I just expect a little bit more. And I think he's been given a lot of leeway over the past year or two. And they were dead right in bringing Cavani in. And he should look at Cavani's posture and his work rate, first of all, and say, okay, maybe that's what I need to bring to my game to elevate me to the next level. Because for me, at this present time, sometimes United are playing with 10 men when he's in the team.
The worry, though, I think the one thing we touched on a couple of weeks ago, one of the worries for us was that every time he seems to get his position seems to become challenged. They brought in Zlatan, obviously they've brought in Cavani, Lukaku. Yeah, like at a big club like that, you're going to have at least two very good players at each position, and it seems like he doesn't rise to that challenge. He spoke to his mentality there and his body language. He just seems to not want to fight for that position, and then, like you said, carry that out on the pitch. When you're not scoring goals and you're not in form, there's other things that you can do to impact the game that you just don't seem to get from him, that you get from the likes of a Cavani or more experienced striker like you talked about.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's a talented boy. Don't get me wrong. I just feel that United haven't got time to wait around for him to reach his potential.
Yeah.
For me, the next guy that United bring in, they have to bring a top striker in if they want to elevate themselves to competing for the Premier League title and going deep in the Champions League. So Cavani is a fantastic player, but he's on the other kind of side of 30 now. He's
33, I think.
Yeah, 33.
A fantastic person for maybe helping the younger players and fellow strikers, and he's got his goals this year. He's been a real impact when coming off the bench. But we're looking long term now. If Ole wants to stay in this job and get a new contract, the next striker they bring in is a big signing for them. And is it Haaland? Is it someone else that they're thinking of?
Yeah,
it's going to be a tough signing for United, but
it is a big talking point. It's a massive talking point amongst the United fan base. I mean, I wouldn't say been at war, but I say that because we do get a lot of people following and commenting on the channel, and some people actually think that we are overly critical of Martial. I do think it is a generational thing. I mean, I'm used to, like Danny, like you said, the players you played against, the work rate comes a standard for me. Yeah. If that's not there in my eyes, then I cannot I can't get into that type of player. I mean, some people would then say, well, what about Berbatov? You like Berbatov when he played, right? A lot of people did not see what Berbatov did off the ball for me. I thought Berbatov was a different caliber of player, totally different tonight. But getting back to Martial again, very similar in terms of body language. I just feel like it is generational. I think, like me and Tim, we're used to players like you, Danny, and that era, the Cantonas. People didn't realise how much Cantona did off the ball and the influence he had. You know what I mean? To be a captain of Manchester United, he might not be in the game on camera, but if you're actually at the games, like I am a lot, you do see, and you would see it as well, Danny, what these players do and how they influence the game. And likes of Cavani now, the Rashfords, the Greenwoods of this world, Martials, can just look at that and look at Cavani and go, he's hardly played this season, but what an influence. And Mark Hughes was talking about it on commentary the other day. He said, when Cavani plays, United's shape changes into something completely different. And that's just one man. And like you said then, Danny, mate, you can learn so much from that experience because Cavani's been around the world that played at the best. And it's now down to this younger generation of player to actually look at that and go, wow, yes, there is something else we can do when we haven't got the ball and we're running and showing off our skills. So I think there is a point for it. It really is.
Yeah. And even my son, who I said is a big Man United fan, he argues about, well, Dad, Greenwood is just the same as Martial with his body language at times. He doesn't run around. He doesn't he doesn't chase back and stuff. I said, but Greenwood, you can kind of give a little bit more leeway to.
Yeah.
Because he's younger. Yeah. Okay, he's come through the academy. But it's a stellar argument from him as well because they're very similar players. I just don't feel that you can have Greenwood and Martial in the team at the same time. Because there was an interesting one. There was a game 2 weeks ago that I was watching, and Martial give the ball away. Okay, he was on the attack, a combination. He tried a 1-2. It didn't happen. And I forgot what team it was. They were running away with the ball, and Bruno Fernandes ran past Martial from a higher position.
Yeah,
and basically stopped the counter attack.
I remember that.
I remember it.
Yeah,
I remember the game.
Yeah.
What was it? I hear the games at the top of my head now because I think Martial tried to give the ball away, trying to play it to Bruno.
Yeah.
And it was Bruno who was the one who took it upon himself to sprint the whole length of the pitch and make a last-ditch sliding tackle. It could have well been the Sheffield United game at home, Matt.
Could have been actually, yeah. Because so then my argument is it Ole and the coaching staff's fault, or is it the players within the team that starting or that's on the field at the time putting the demands and letting Martial know that that's not acceptable? That I see Bruno working his ass off. I see the young boy working his ass off. Even Fred's impressed me a lot more this year than I've seen before. For me, you got to have 6 or 7 of those guys on the team. You can't have 2 or 3 players like Martial because you're never going to get up there. You're never going to win it. Roy Keane's come out and said it. There's not enough of those players within that to contend for a title.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You can have that type of player if you've got everything else in place, which United don't have. I mean, I'm sure you'd have loved to play against this current backline of United's, Danny, mate. Surely.
Victor Lindelof. Wouldn't you love to go up against Victor Lindelof?
It's very interesting. As I said, he's obviously made his mind up that Maguire and Lindelof are his 2 centre backs. Yeah. I mean, Bailey is like, he impresses me at times, but he's very erratic at times. It's strange for me that United can't go out and find or develop a strong centre back. That's what all their success was made of in past years, in having that attacking flair to let them just go because they were secure in their knowledge of knowing we got these guys at the back that will handle most of the attacks that are coming the other way. Yeah,
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything else on that defense then, Tim?
No, Danny. I was sort of gonna ask him about playing against the current back line, but you kind of covered that. But one of the things I found interesting was you talked about the players on the pitch, and Bruno obviously showing up by example with what he does in terms of his work rate too. But in terms of the captaincy, do you see the captaincy as sort of being a void right now at United? Obviously, Maguire being the captain, but is there more leadership that needs to come to trickle down from the captaincy through those players, or is it just something that the players sort of need to reinvent themselves and impose themselves more on each other?
Well, I go back to what I said about Roy Keane, and he wasn't the captain of the team when I played against United back in the glory days. But he acted like a captain. The demands. I remember him having a go at Steve Bruce once, and Steve Bruce was kind of looking around at Gary Pallister going, who's it? What's he talking about? But Keane would just go off, and those were the demands they put on each other. And to me, that's a sign of a good team when you are talking like that and you are putting those demands on each other, whether it's tracking back, whether it's working harder, whether it's being in a certain position. Yeah. That's the role of your many captains on the field. You can have one captain, but in reality, you should have 4 or 5 captains in that team. I think it's a difficult stage for United at the moment because I think they went through De Gea for a little bit, did they, as a captain?
Yeah.
They went Maguire. For me, there's only one captain in that team at this moment, and it's Bruno.
Yeah.
He played like a captain, but I think he's starting to rub off on certain players within that group, which is a good thing for United as well. You look at the resurgence of Martial, you look at Rashford, who's been a lot better lately as well, and Cavani being in that group. So you're getting around 3 or 4 guys there that can act as captains, as well as Maguire, who I still feel can impose himself a little bit more and be a little bit more vocal. Sure, the left backs come on and been improving and been really good as of late. So is it Bruno? Is it through his play? I've seen him digging out people out on the pitch as well, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
that's it. That's exactly it, mate. I mean, going into how you see this Premier League season ending, I mean, where would you? Is United in a position now where you'd expect them to be with this current crop of players and how they're growing? 2nd year in a row, it's actually the youngest team in the Premier League. So we have got room to grow. You touched on the coaching there. Maybe these players can get better. Not a lot of money in football right now to go splashing out these big transfer fees. Looking at the table as it is now, we can all see City are sort of on that. I hate to say it, but it does look like they're on that next level in terms of development and ready to take the league title. Liverpool slipping. Are United where you'd expect them to be right now, or is it a surprise position for you, Danny, as well right now, where United are actually at?
For me, it's a little bit of a surprise where they are, just because of the start that they had, and they had that little kind of blip in form as well. But they reacted fantastically well. I really do feel that Ole is the perfect coach at this moment in time for this group of players. I think they respect him. He's not your guy that's gonna stand on the sideline and bark orders or get involved with the referees. See him, he's pretty calm, sitting in his seat on the bench. At times, I want him to be jumping up on the sidelines just to give certain players a little kick up the arse, but that's not how he coaches, and I respect that. And I think the players he's gotten through to certain players. We spoke about Shaw. He's definitely done something with Pogba, who's changed his mentality. But no, I agree with you. They've surprised me being where they are at this moment in time. But I think sometimes I've played in teams where we've looked at ourselves halfway through the season or just after Christmas, and we're in the top 6, and we've gone, how the hell have we got here? You surprise yourself, and it's not based on just the way your team's playing. It could be the actual level of the other teams that are trying to compete for those top 5, 6 places that aren't performing very well.
Yeah, well, we just got the FA Cup draw quarter-final. We're away at Leicester. City are away at Everton. Put some good draws in the quarter-finals, guys. DL. I didn't even know that the draw was going on right now. Everyone's just informing me what's happening. So,
breaking news.
Yeah.
So United away at Leicester, yeah?
United away at Leicester and City away at Everton. Good games, them.
Yeah.
Very good games. Don't know who Chelsea have got. Be interesting. But obviously, I think if you get through this round, then you're going to be looking favourites of getting through it. But yeah, I mean, let's get back to the Premier League. I mean, no fans, Danny. It has affected things. You said then, I mean, as a manager at the moment, it must be difficult. If you'd have told Frank Lampard at the start of this season, you're 5 points behind Liverpool, Frank, and you're going to get the sack halfway through a season, you'd have gone, that's just ludicrous, right? But just shows you how crazy this season's been.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for Frank, and I've spoken about this on a couple of other news channels. I think it was a job too soon for him, guys. I honestly do. I think it was his dream job of going back to Chelsea. A little bit like a Steven Gerrard going back to Liverpool before the stint that he's been on. I think it would have been too soon for him. I would have hoped they would have given him more time. I really do. You think about it, Chelsea were top of the league, I think, 6 or 7 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they went on a little bit of a blip. There was rumors of there not being too much harmony in the locker room and the changing room. And that always happens when results are going a little bit downwards. The press start to engage with the players, and they try to, rust up a little bit of a storm. So I feel sorry for Frankie. I know him and his staff will brush it off, and I have no doubt that he'll be a good head coach one day. I would like to see him go to maybe a smaller team, maybe back in the Championship, or maybe be an assistant somewhere, whether it be with the national team or at a really big club, and learn off of someone how you actually. There's so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know. Involved with like a manager, a head coach's job nowadays, and I just think it was just a little bit too soon for him at that level.
You could say pretty much like John Terry's doing right now.
Yeah,
at Villa. The same couple of years at Villa. I was going to put him in good stead. Yeah, I think that might actually be right. We've seen Arteta move on from City to take the job after being under Pep. Could well be the way forward, Danny, mate.
Yeah, you had Giggsy at United for a while as well.
Yeah, true.
Not saying he's a bad coach, but I just feel that these guys that were top elite players need to do a little bit of foundation work first of all at a club where they can learn, lose games, and it not be too much pressure early on in their managerial career. Stick to their philosophies and the way they think and coach, and then hopefully get back to the big club that they were such big elite players for.
Yeah. Yep. Timmy, do you want to touch on something then, mate? Sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask, getting back to the Chelsea one, you know, obviously they brought in a boatload of new players. Does that tie into, you know, just the whole locker room harmony thing like you were talking about, and sort of trying to implement those players into the squad and how you're going to set them up? I know we talked about maybe it being a job too far for Frank. Would a more experienced manager with that volume of players been able to handle them better, do you think?
Well, listen, Frank was an elite player, a high level player back in his day. But when you're a player and you go into the coaching ranks, it doesn't matter if it was yesterday, if it was a week ago, a year ago, you're looked at totally different straight away. There's always a kind of divide between players and the staff. Whether you're liked or not, there's always that divide. Has to be that balance as well. But I feel with Chelsea, they spent whatever it was in the summer, that added to the pressure of Frank having to deliver this year. A little bit of a pass last year because they were under that transfer embargo, and he played a lot of the youngsters who did very, very well. They finished in Champions League places last year. The young players that he was given the chance to are now gone from being £15 million players into possibly 50 million pound players. So there's a lot of good stuff that went on, but as we know, the owner, the president at Chelsea, doesn't matter who you are. He's got a quick trigger there, and if he feels that things are not going right, and he spent a lot of money on certain players within that squad, and he feels there's someone out there like Tuchel was out there and ready to come in, he'll do it.
That's it, definitely. I mean, we're coming to the end of the show, guys. Cheers for all the comments and everyone coming up with your questions as well, and keeping us in the loop about the FA Cup draw as well. I had no idea that was tonight. I know Chelsea are playing Barnsley. Let's hope we get the same result as that fixture last time and we see Chelsea walking. But before we go, guys, we've got to just get a score prediction, Danny, for this weekend. Your old club, West Brom, are they going to cause a shock or upset the apple cart by beating United or getting a draw, a point at least? How do you see it going at weekend, mate?
It really depends if United get an early goal. The longer the game goes on, I think it's more beneficial towards Big Sam's plan, and we know he can bunker in with his teams and make it a really frustrating afternoon for the big teams who are usually under a lot of pressure in front of their fans at home. But because the home fans are not in the stadiums at the moment, I just feel United should have a little bit too much for them. And if they can get that early goal, I'm expecting a 3-0 or possibly a 4-0 victory.
Yeah, got one of your old chants there in the comment section. Danny Dichio chant going on there.
I've heard that chant ring around BMO Field a few times in my life.
At least it's the one where I've got no hair and we don't care. So
I may or may not have sang that song a few times.
Nice. Tim, is it going to be a stressful day for us on Sunday, mate, or not? I mean, we got stressful lives, but are United going to make it any better?
I hope not, but I totally agree with what Danny has said. I think that it comes down to if we can get that early goal, and draw them out essentially, then the longer the goal goes without a game. We've seen that United struggle the longer a game goes to break teams down. Teams to sit deeper and deeper and compress their lines, and it's so difficult for us to break them down. So hopefully we can get an early goal. I'm going to go 2-0. Yeah. I'll go 2-0 United.
It's like Ian says in the comments there, Ferguson's last ever game for United at West Brom, 5-5. I don't think I'd have any if it finished like that on Sunday. I tell you that right now. I don't think my heart could handle another game like that. I mean, watching Tottenham and Everton last night was enough. I mean, was it even our team? I don't know how managers cope these days. But yeah, Danny, I just want to say a massive thanks for coming on, mate. I also wish you all luck, obviously, with your coaching and everything going forward over there with Toronto and everything. I hope it all works out and you start moving up that coaching ladder, mate.
No problem. Thank you
Cheers,
for having me on. Okay, guys. Take care.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant, mate. Tim, cheers, pal. And everyone in the comments, hit that subscribe button if you're watching for the first time. Give the video a like. And we will see you at weekend. It's going to be probably a stressful one, but what's new? Let's just go and roll with it. Crazy season continues. For now, good night, everybody.